I didn't notice the moment my life started shrinking. That was the strange part. There was no breakdown. No dramatic failure. Just a quiet feeling that every day was becoming a copy of the last one, and somehow, I was helping it happen. Then one small comment from a stranger made me question something I had never questioned before. I was 34 when this happened. I worked in a mid-sized insurance office outside Chicago. Nothing terrible about the job. Predictable hours. Predictable people. Predictable conversations. Every morning looked almost identical. I'd wake up at 6:10, stare at the ceiling for a minute, grab coffee from the same gas station, and drive the same route to work. I even parked in almost the exact same spot every day. At the time, I thought stability was a good thing. Maybe it still is. But there's a difference between stability and unconscious repetition. I just didn't know that yet. Most days at work felt emotionally flat. Not stressful. Just muted. Like my brain was operating on low battery. I'd answer emails, sit through meetings, laugh politely at jokes I'd already heard 10 times. And the weird thing was, everyone around me seemed fine with it. So I assumed I should be too. I remember thinking, maybe this is just adulthood. That sentence stayed in my head for years. One Thursday afternoon, my manager asked me to train a new employee named Daniel. Quiet guy. Probably late 20s. Observant in a way that made you slightly self-conscious. Not rude. Just attentive. For the first few days, he barely talked unless necessary. But I noticed something unusual about him almost immediately. He paid attention to tiny behaviors. Not work-related things. Human things. Like how people apologized before speaking in meetings. Or how certain coworkers changed their tone depending on who entered the room. At lunch one day, he suddenly asked me, "Do you actually like this job?" The question caught me off guard. Not because it was offensive. Because nobody ever asked questions like that anymore. I gave the automatic answer. "It's all right. Pays the bills." He nodded slowly like he expected that response. Then he said something that bothered me for days. "You say that like you rehearsed it." I laughed awkwardly, but internally, something tightened. That night, I kept replaying the conversation in my head. Not because he was wrong. Because he was right. I had rehearsed that response. Probably hundreds of times. Over the next few weeks, I started noticing things I had ignored for years. Not just in other people. In myself. I noticed how often I predicted negative outcomes before anything even happened. How quickly I dismissed opportunities. How often I said things like, "That's probably not for me. I'm just not good at that. People like me don't really change." The disturbing part wasn't hearing those thoughts. It was realizing how automatic they were. Like background noise. Like they'd been running silently for years without my permission. One evening after work, Daniel and I were sitting outside near the parking garage. He was reading something on his phone while I complained about a project deadline. At one point, I said, "Honestly, nothing ever really changes anyway." He looked up immediately. "Who told you that?" I remember staring at him. "What? Who taught you that nothing changes?" The question irritated me a little. Nobody taught me. It's just reality. But he didn't respond right away. Then he quietly said, "Sometimes people confuse familiar thoughts with objective truth." That sentence followed me home. I couldn't stop thinking about it. Familiar thoughts. Objective truth. Were they different? A few days later, I asked him what he was always reading. He showed me a notes app filled with observations about behavior patterns. Things about repetition, self-image, subconscious habits. At first, I thought it sounded overly analytical. But part of me was curious. He explained something in a very simple way. The brain likes efficiency, he said. If you repeat the same thoughts long enough, your mind stops questioning them. It treats them like instructions. Instructions. That word hit me harder than expected. Because suddenly, I started noticing how many instructions I gave myself every day without realizing it. You're awkward. Don't speak too much. People probably don't care. You'll mess it up. Stay realistic. I had heard those thoughts so often they felt permanent. But what if they were just repeated? That idea unsettled me more than I expected. For the next month, I started experimenting with something small. Nothing dramatic. I just began observing my thoughts instead of immediately believing them. That was harder than it sounds. I'd catch myself assuming someone disliked me because of their tone. Or deciding I'd fail before even trying something. And for the first time, I'd pause and ask, is that actually true? Sometimes the answer surprised me. One morning at work, I noticed how tense I became before speaking during meetings. My heart would speed up even over minor comments. Normally, I'd stay quiet. But this time, I forced myself to contribute one idea. Nothing brilliant. Just one honest suggestion. And something strange happened. Nobody judged me. Nobody looked annoyed. The meeting continued normally. But internally, it felt significant. Because my prediction had been wrong. That realization stayed with me all day. Then I started noticing how much of my behavior was built around predictions that never got tested. Avoiding conversations. Avoiding risks. Avoiding honesty. Not because reality confirmed my fears. But because my subconscious had been protecting old assumptions. And once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. Around that time, my younger sister invited me to her birthday dinner. Normally, I would have found an excuse to leave early. Family gatherings drained me. But I decided to stay longer than usual. At some point during dinner, my sister mentioned how distant I'd become over the years. She said it casually. Not accusingly. But it landed heavily. You're physically here, she said, but mentally you always seem somewhere else. I wanted to defend myself. Instead, I just listened. Because deep down, I knew exactly what she meant. I had spent years emotionally withdrawing from life before life could disappoint me. That realization hurt. Not dramatically. Quietly. Like recognizing your own reflection after ignoring mirrors for too long. That night, I sat in my apartment with no TV on, no music, no distractions. And I started thinking about where my inner voice actually came from. Some of it sounded like old teachers. Some sounded like my father. Some sounded like moments I thought I'd forgotten. Embarrassing experiences. Failures. Rejections. Tiny moments that somehow became permanent identities. I realized something uncomfortable. My subconscious wasn't trying to destroy my life. It was trying to protect me using outdated information. That changed everything. Because suddenly, I stopped treating myself like a problem to fix. And started treating myself like someone who had learned certain patterns too well. That shift sounds small. But psychologically, it changed the way I reacted to almost everything. Instead of saying, "This is who I am," I started asking, "When did I learn this?" And strangely, that question created space. Space between me and my automatic reactions. Space between fear and behavior. Over the next few months, people around me started reacting differently to me. Not because I became charismatic overnight. Because I became more present. I listened more carefully. Spoke more honestly. Stopped apologizing for small things. Stopped assuming disagreement meant rejection. I even noticed physical changes. Less tension in my shoulders. Better sleep. Fewer moments of mental exhaustion after social situations. And the weirdest part? Nothing external had changed very much. Same apartment. Same job. Same city. But internally, it felt like someone cleaned a fogged-up window. One afternoon, Daniel and I were leaving work when he asked me something. So what changed? I thought about it for a second. Then I said, I stopped believing every thought immediately. He smiled slightly. That's bigger than most people realize. A few weeks later, Daniel left the company unexpectedly. Different opportunity somewhere else. Before leaving, he handed me a folded piece of paper. Inside was a single sentence. Your mind listens to what you repeat. That was it. No long speech. No advice. Just that sentence. For some reason, I kept it. And over time, I started noticing how true it was. Not in motivational ways. In ordinary moments. Like how constantly expecting disappointment changes your posture before conversations even begin. Or how repeatedly calling yourself invisible eventually affects how you enter rooms. Or how years of quiet self-rejection slowly become personality traits. That realization was uncomfortable. But also freeing. Because if repetition could build harmful patterns, maybe repetition could build healthier ones too. Not fake positivity. Not pretending life is perfect. Just more conscious thinking. More awareness. More interruption of automatic fear. I started changing tiny things intentionally. Walking different routes. Speaking to strangers occasionally. Saying what I actually meant instead of the safest version of it. At first, those changes felt unnatural. Then they started feeling normal. That's when I understood something important. The subconscious doesn't really care whether a belief helps you. It cares whether it's familiar. And that explains so much about human behavior. Why people stay in situations they dislike. Why some people repeat painful relationship patterns. Why insecurity can feel safer than growth. Familiarity feels convincing. Even when it's hurting you. About a year after all this started, I visited my mother for dinner. At one point, she looked at me strangely and said, "You seem lighter lately." I asked what she meant. She shrugged. "I don't know. You just seem more awake." That comment stayed with me during the drive home. Because I think she was right. For years, I had been mentally sleepwalking through my own life while assuming my thoughts represented reality. But thoughts aren't always reality. Sometimes they're echoes. Sometimes they're old survival strategies repeating themselves long after the danger disappeared. And sometimes, the biggest shift in a person's life happens quietly. The moment they realize they don't have to automatically obey every thought their mind produces. I still think about that now. Especially during stressful moments. The mind is constantly rehearsing identities. Constantly reinforcing assumptions. And most people never notice the script running underneath their decisions. I didn't notice mine either. Until I finally did. And honestly, that may be the strangest part of being human. The fact that we can spend years listening to a voice inside our head. Without ever asking who taught it to speak.